You can be seated. Stay away with call.
Stay away.
Defense way with call.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have your seat now.
Tim Shea.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Please give us your name, sir.
It's Timothy Shade. Last name's Schade.
And, sir, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed with the University of Tennessee. I work for the Institute of Public Service, which is an umbrella under University of Tennessee. And under that umbrella, it's the Law Enforcement Innovation Center, and then through that, we run the National Forensic Academy.
What is the National Forensics Academy?
It's a academy. It's a 10-week program that is housed in Oak Ridge through the University of Tennessee. 10-week program. We get people that work in law enforcement that do forensics from all over the country. We've had some from Iceland, Germany, Kuwait, the Republic of Georgia, but normally they're from all over the United States. A lot of state agencies and a lot of just department people.
How long have you held this position?
It's been a little over 2 years.
Where were you employed prior to University of Tennessee?
Knoxville Police Department
And how long were you employed with the Knoxville Police Department?
for a little over 28 years.
What did you do with the Knoxville Police Department?
I worked in the forensic unit, so I had a couple of duties. One of them was crime scene, and the other was I'm a certified latent print examiner, so comparing latent prints.
What is a certified latent print examiner?
The certification for certified latent print examiner is through the International Association for Identification, and there's about probably a little over 1,200 of us in the world that are certified in that. And it's a testing procedure that you go through to become a certified latent print examiner.
How long have you been a certified latent print examiner?
Since January of 1998.
And are you still a certified latent print examiner?
I am.
Directing your attention back to January 2007, were you employed with the Knoxville Police Department?
Yes.
And in the course of your duties, what was your position with KPD?
I was a senior evidence technician.
Now, Joe Cox has already testified and introduced a lot of the evidence. And really what I want to focus on with you is whether or not you processed any, or whether or not you looked for latent prints on any items yourself, or tried to verify prints and any evidence that you collected.
Yeah, I was part of that whole process of not only collection, but whenever items were collected, trying to produce latent prints off of those items.
You can explain to us generally what's the process you go through in attempting to lift a print from an item.
One of the things that I teach at the National Forensic Academy is latent print development. So just kind of a quick synopsis of the process you go through. First thing you would look at is to see what kind of substrate it is, whether it's a porous or non-porous surface. And then you would choose a certain type of development technique that would correspond with whatever that substrate is.
Now, what types of surfaces are better for keeping a print as opposed to surfaces that are not so good?
Usually you want to have a smooth, not too dirty or dusty print, something that's fairly clean, something that's not too oily. If you had a non-porous surface, that's going to be something, if you put a drop of water on, it's just going to sit on top and not soak into it. So how you would react to that would be completely different than a porous surface. So if you had a non-porous surface, sweat's going to be about 98% water, so that part of it can dissipate pretty quickly. So the development process you use might be different depending on the age of the print, how it was put on, what it was put on, something like that. As opposed to a porous surface. With a porous surface, you touch it, the sweat gets on the surface, eventually it soaks into the surface, the fibers of the paper, whatever it is. So it soaks into it. So what you use to raise the print's going to be a little bit different, as opposed to non-porous surface where the liquid will sit on top and last a while, and you can process it or rehydrate it that way. with a porous surface, you're going to use some sort of chemical processing that will react to. Usually what we used at this time in 2007 was ninhydrin. And ninhydrin is a chemical, it's a liquid that reacts to the amino acids in your sweat. So it turns it what's called a Rumen's purple from the guy that created or brought it forward.
And once it turns it that color, then what do you then do?
I'm sorry?
Once it turns that color, what do you then do?
We would photograph it because eventually it can fade away whenever we do the ninhydrin on a porous surface.
And then are you able to look to see if there's any prints available then?
Yeah, it would. The process that we would go through, usually with forensics, everybody wants things to happen quicker. So you may have seen it on television shows or movies where they process it with ninhydrin and then they'll put steam on it, which will make the process go quicker. If you didn't put steam on it, they would still develop over time. But so what we would typically do is process it with ninhydrin, let it dry, put steam on it. The heat will develop the print so it makes it show up quicker. Those will dissipate over time. So what we'll do is photograph them after that so that we can do any type of comparisons off the photograph.
And once you do a comparison, let's say you get an identification that's made, does that mean, does it end there based on that first identification?
No, the process we would go through is analysis, comparison, evaluation, verification. So whenever we get to that comparison stage, and if I personally think that person A left the print on item 123, then I will keep that along, and then that has to get verified by someone else. So someone else would go behind me and verify that that person did in fact leave that print.
And back in January 2007, who did you work with in your unit?
At that time I worked with Dan Crenshaw, and he was also a certified late print examiner.
Now, if we could you have the opportunity to examine Exhibit 381?
Yes, I did.
What is Exhibit 381?
This is the bank envelope that was taken out of the Toyota.
And explain to us the process that you and Dan Crenshaw went through in examining that envelope for the presence of any prints.
On this, what Dan did is he processed it with ninhydrin, which is the chemical that reacts to the amino acids in your sweat, and developed latent prints on it. And he, at that time, we had a AFIS unit, which is Automated Fingerprint Identification System. He put one of the prints in the computer system to see if he could get a suspect out of it. So whenever you see it on TV, it's not really based on reality of how it really works. Whenever you see it, you'll see all the fingerprints flash through, and then it stops, and then you get a match, and everybody gets excited. Whenever, in reality, how it works is you put it in there and you get a list of possibilities that come back. And through those list of possibilities, you go through and see if any of them will match up to the latent print that you put in there. And that's the process he went through, and he ended up identifying a print off of the envelope.
And whose print did he identify?
He ended up identifying Lamarcus Davidson, his right thumb.
His right thumb?
Yes.
So now, once he made the identification to Mr. Davidson, what's the next step?
After that, what he did is he called me, I came in, and I verified that that print was in fact Davidson's right thumb.
Like Exhibit 381 in his evidence?
No objection.
And in this envelope, we've got these 3 sheets. What are these 3 sheets?
So the first sheet is just an image of that latent print. So what it looked like after it was developed. It turns a purple color. It's just a black and white image. So it's just grayscaled into black and white. This image is what our AFIS computer would look like. This would be the image that we put in there. We put marks on that latent print that those marks are sent off, a mathematical algorithm is created, sent off, and it searches what we had at that time was searching the Tennessee database, so the entire state of Tennessee, that database. From that mathematical algorithm, it looks at all the prints that are in the database, and it creates a list of possibilities, and those list of possibilities show up down here. There's a numerical value for how many of those points match up to the existing prints. And then we just go through and we look at it, and we see which one of them match up. And in this one, it came back as the #1 respondent. That was LaMarcus Davidson, and this is just his known print. It's printed out from that.
You have your report there that you're looking at.
Yes.
Why did you examine any other items that were recovered from Chipman Street?
We went through a lot of different items. I mean, anything, we developed a lot of prints on a lot of different items. We had a lot of people to compare them to. So we just went through all that entire process with everyone involved.
Looks like this is going to be the magazine, Exhibit 377, the magazine from the north bedroom.
Yes.
Were you able to look at any prints from the magazine?
On that one, what we did is we used a process called cyanoacrylate ester, which is just super glue fuming. So in that one, we would just heat up super glue to a fume, and then it attaches to the fingerprints that are left on that. So yes, we ended up, the 9mm magazine from the bedroom ended up matching a print to LaMarcus Davidson and also from Latalis Coppins.
What about Exhibit 356? Looks like it's the all-purpose cleaner. There's some black stuff on this all-purpose cleaner.
On that one, I don't have an identification from that. It looks like it was processed with magnetic fingerprint powder, which is probably what we use on a lot of non-porous surfaces. It's real effective to be able to get, especially the fresh prints.
So just because something is processed, does that mean that you can get a print?
It does not.
Looking at this container here, would that be a good container to leave a print or to look a print from?
This one's a little tricky because it has a little bit of a texture to it, and they make these things that way on purpose so that you don't have just lots of fingerprints that are left on items, bottles that you're using. So, I mean, it's not impossible, but it is going to be a little bit difficult, especially on these spots where you would handle it mostly to apply it. And that's going to be where you have most of your textured surfaces. It's kind of like a lot of the things that you have in your house, refrigerator, things like that. Your handles aren't going to be that nice, smooth surface that will show fingerprints. It's going to be something that's going to be textured that you don't have to worry about.
Exhibit 399, it's going to be the photographs of from Shannon's 21st birthday. Did you examine Exhibit 399?
Yeah, those were, I believe the actual photographs were processed with magnetic powder on the photograph side of it, and then on the other side, there was a combination of fingerprint powder. It's kind of a semi-porous surface, which is, for us, is probably one of the more tricky ones, because if you touch it, fingerprints will sit on it for a while, but eventually they'll soak into it. So it's kind of an issue with us. So that was a combination of fingerprint powder and ninhydrin used on the backside of those.
What about the gas cans recovered from the house? Did you try to process those gas cans for fingerprints?
Yeah, those would have been processed with super glue fuming or cyanoacrylate. And that's kind of that same textured surface. It's really difficult. Whenever we do week 3 of the NFA, that's one of the things that we typically try to do is have that textured surface and try to get prints off of it. That's one of the bigger challenges for us, is getting it off a surface like that.
Were you ever getting any prints off of any of the gas cans from the house?
No.
Any prints that you found in the house belong to who?
All of the prints that we found were either to Channon Christian, LaMarcus Davidson, or Latalis Coppins.
You did not find Mr. Boyd's prints on anything in the house?
I did not.
Nor did you find any prints belonging to George Thomas in the house?
I did not.
All right. Did you have occasion to go to the ME's office?
I did.
What did you go to the ME's office for?
Initially, whenever Mr. Newsom was found, I went there to try to fingerprint him, to try to identify him. And I ended up getting one fingerprint off of him, but I was not able to identify him through APHIS because he was not in our system.
Did you have occasion to go back to the Amy's office?
I did.
And what was that for?
I went back there to collect evidence for the Channon Christian.
Now, the evidence that went with Mr. Newsom, who collected that evidence?
I believe that was Kim Price.
And she's not with KPD anymore?
Correct.
And so, the evidence that you collected from Ms. Christian, I guess, tell us about collecting that evidence.
That was just kind of the typical process where we would show up at the ME's office, and anything that they collect from the person, we would go ahead and collect from them.
I can approach and show you Exhibit 384. You recognize Exhibit 384?
Yes, this was the striped shirt that was recovered from her from the medical examiner's office.
I can move Exhibit 384 in as evidence.
No objection. Let it be received.
Exhibit 374. Recognize Exhibit 374.
This is why I have it marked as a white tank top. I understand it's called a camisole, but this was collected from the medical examiner's office also.
I can move Exhibit 374 in as evidence.
No objection. Let it be received.
Now, in addition to the clothing that was on Ms. Christian, what other items did you collect in the Amy's office?
I believe we collected a rape kit, and I believe the trash can, and I believe the items that were in the trash can.
If I can approach and show you Exhibit 349, ask you to recognize Exhibit 349.
Now, these are the pieces of pink fabric, and that's from the medical examiner's office.
I'd like to move Exhibit 349 in as evidence and ask for permission to open that bag and publish that to the jury.
No objection. Let it be received and you can vote.
And where was that item recovered?
I believe all of these items were inside the trash can.
So Exhibit 404 is already entered into evidence, but I asked if you recognize Exhibit 404.
Yeah, this is the floral fabric and the kind of the, I guess, blanket. It was also included in that.
You asked for permission to publish that to the jury.
Very well.
And that was in the trash can?
Yes, I believe so. And then there's sheets tied up, cut off.
Hold that up. Can you step down?
Sure.
You want to display that to the jury? is that a not? Did you also collect trash bags?
Yes.
I can approach and show you exhibit 409. Recognize exhibit 409?
Yes, this is the white garbage bag from inside the trash can.
And you collected this from the ME's office?
Yes.
We'd like to move exhibit 409 in as evidence, and we'd ask for permission to publish it to the jury.
I don't have an objection, I just want to make sure I know which bag
Sure.
we're looking at.
And Your Honor, actually, it may be easier if, is it okay for him to step down so that I can,
Yes, sir, that's fine.
this is gonna be the, can you describe to us which bag this is?
This is the white garbage bag. There were 5 black garbage bags and then 1 white garbage bag.
Do you recall, how this plastic garbage bag was positioned?
I believe that was the one that was on her head and face.
And what's all that white stuff on the bag?
What we did on this is we processed it with super glue fuming, then followed it up with magnetic powder. So the dark spots are just going to be where we apply magnetic powder.
What exhibit number is that, John?
409.
Let that be received in the record.
I can show you exhibit 351. I ask you to recognize exhibit 351.
Yes, this is garbage bag number 5, which I believe is going to be the bag that's going to be on the car.
And part of,
Yeah, the one that's going to be closest to the surface.
okay.
So you have bag 1 that would be closest to Channon Christian, and then bag 5 would be the biggest.
I'd like to move exhibit, I call it
351.
351.
No objection.
Let it be received.
You want that out?
Please.
So the white spots you see on this It's gonna be where the super glue fuming attached to something doesn't necessarily mean the fingerprint, but attaches something. And then what we did is we cut certain parts out of it and we put them in a quilting loop. It looks like this. So what the idea behind the quilting loop is just to be able to make the print flat, easy to look at whenever we want to take pictures of it. It's a nice flat surface. You don't have to worry about depth of field or anything like that. So that's what we use it for. The quilting loop that we're out of that.
Were you able to make an identification of any prints on that bag?
Yes. This bag was a palm print of the market tape.
And so how would that, I guess, how would that bag have been positioned, or how would his palm, how would hand been positioned with the print on that bag? How would the bag be positioned?
With this, it gets a little tricky, because typically, this is, it's not your typical trash bag, it's more of a, kind of a lawn and garden, kind of a lawn bag. It's gonna look like a little bit thinner than what your normal trash bag is. And the problem with that is, this is more like, the plastic you would have on a shopping bag you might get from one of your grocery stores or whatever. So it's a really light surface, it gets sprinkled up real easily, you don't have that nice flat, smooth surface that you're looking for. So on this, if you, normally whenever you take it out of the container, typically you're handling it with fingers. So we wouldn't, I mean, if you got fingers, it really wouldn't show a whole lot. But having a palm print on there is a little bit different, because the times that you would put a palm print on there is if you have enough weight in it and you're holding it to where it would fit on your hand and be able to leave a nice palm print on it. And other than that, if you had it sitting on a surface and push down on it, then another way you'd be able to leave that palm print on it. So it's just kind of a really light surface. There's not a whole lot of weight to it to be able to sit on something and be able to leave a good large palm.
And which palm print was it, or which was it?
To look. That was the right palm.
Exhibit 352, you recognize exhibit 352?
This is bag number 4, so it's gonna be the one just inside that one.
Exhibit 352, is that it?
No objection.
Same kind of plastic bag, same process as super glue fuming, and similar results where we also got some palm prints off of it.
Can you show us where?
One here. One here, maybe then one here.
Mr. Davis's palm prints?
Yeah, so I believe we got 3 palm prints off of this, all belonging to this here.
And again, that would be consistent with the bag being positioned how?
It's just kind of the same thing, really light bag, something that either has enough weight in it and pressure to get on your palm, or enough pressure going down to your palm.
Exhibit 348, you recognize exhibit 348?
Yeah, this is bag number 3, so this would be the one that's just inside of bag number 4.
Would you like to move 348 in acceptance?
No objection.
Let it be received.
Same style of plastic bag, cut out to where the palm print was, and very similar light, kind of that garden lawn bag also.
Exhibit 350.
Bag number 2 is the next one in. And on this one, we did not get any identifiable phone prints on.
Yeah. Any reason why?
Whenever you're processing things, it's kind of hit and miss. It just, typically it's gonna be somebody that didn't handle it well enough, or whenever you get, prints that are on something like this and it gets touched against something else with, it can get rubbed off pretty easily. So, it's not shocking that we didn't get anything off of this.
Exhibit 347.
And this is the most interior bag.
You would offer exhibit 347 and its evidence.
No objection.
Ready to receive.
This will be the bag touching.
Yes. And we also processed this with super group union, but did not get any identifiable prints on this either.
Exhibit 329. Recognize exhibit 329.
These are the IDs on the garbage bag number 3. So this is what we were talking about earlier with the quilting loop with the plastic bag in there. And this is a copy of the fingerprints, the palm print that was, the photo was taken, and then the comparison was made.
Now, was all that done at the Amy's office or the Knoxville Police Department?
We collected it from the enemy's office, but all of the processing and all the comparisons were done.
Exhibit 328.
And this is from bag number 4. Another quilting loop, palm print on it. And the comparison IDs with the markup on it. So, very similar.
Exhibit 324.
329,
That's for me. That was
that's 326.
This was also from bag number 4. This is the ID on that. It has the original part from the bag. That's the image from it, and that's the identification from today's.
Exhibit 326 and its evidence. Is that what you said? You said it was 324. remove, for the record, 326 in his evidence, 328 in his evidence, and 350 in his evidence.
No objection.
Let them be received.
Got two more. Exhibit 325, you recognize exhibit 325?
This is from bag number 5.
I do exhibit 325 in his evidence.
Same type of thing, all print in the quilting loop. This is the image of it. And then just doing the black, white reversal on it, and then the known image showing the marks that it correspond to the points inside. Bag number 4.
Exhibit 327 in his evidence.
And the print on the quilting loop. It has the image that was taken from the bag, and then the image of the known preparation there.
This back here, was this just with the garbage bag we're in?
Yeah.
So for the record, I'm just gonna keep this bag marked garbage bag remnants after removed ID labels. I'm gonna keep that with all these exhibits. And then lastly, did you get the trash cans with it?
We did.
And is that the trash can there?
Yes.
Take it, exhibit 416 in its evidence. Take it, did you toss that trash can for friends?
Yeah, we did a couple of different things. One thing we did, we took it to TDI and we were just searching for any type of biological material inside it using alternate light source, because they have a really good alternate light source. We searched through the interior of that and didn't really find anything. We also processed the entire trash can, and it's a little bit of a tough surface, and it's a textured surface all over it. The getting prints off of it would be really difficult anyway. We were not able to get any prints off.
So, and was that surprising to you?
No, we were hopeful, but, I mean, we always try, but, we were not able. These were samples that were collected from Mr. Newsom, January 2007. Blood sample, rectal swab, oral swab, collected from the office.
I'd like to move exhibit 386 in his evidence.
No objection.
Let it be received.
385.
And this was the rape kit that was performed on January. And I collected this from the office.
I believe it says exhibit 385. Lee. Did you collect this paint can or was this somebody else?
I mean, that's.
Somebody else.
Another.
Anything else? So at a later time, did you happen to take Mr. Boyd's clothing to TBI?
I did.
And can you explain to us the process, and when you get items from the KPD property room and transport them to TBI, are they sealed? How does that work?
They would be sealed. What I would do is I would go to our property unit, I would sign them out, and they would give them to me, and then I would take, we would have paperwork filled out for TBI. We'd take it to TBI, and then TBI would do an intake of the evidence that I gave them.
And also the holster that was recovered from the Pontiac Sunbird, did you also cause that to be taken to TBI?
Yes, that was also taken to TBI.
Pass witness.
Cross-examination.
I believe, didn't you also collect the buccal swab for LaMarcus Davidson?
I did.
And you actually went, was it to Blount County to collect that?
Yes.
And again, just so, I think the jury's already heard it, but a buccal swab, could you describe that briefly?
Yes, buccal swab is going to be kind of the inside of the cheek. So that's the buccal part of your cheek, your body. So what we do whenever we collect those, use at least 2 swabs to just cut, kind of Q-tip type cotton swabs. They are sealed in a sterile packaging. You take those out, and how I would do it is make sure that they don't have anything in their mouth food-wise or tobacco, anything like that. And then I would take the swabs, I'd rub on the inside of the cheek for about 8 seconds on each side of the cheek and swirling it on all sides, and that's just getting that known DNA profile from whatever person you're getting them from.
And so you collected that sample, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you followed the procedures as far as securing that and sending that to the TBI as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I know we talked a little bit about fingerprint identification, and I think you were talking about the ACE-V method, is that correct?
Yes.
And again, part of that is you do an initial comparison of the print that you're looking at, and I guess there is a difference between a latent print and a patent print, correct?
Yeah, there's latent print's going to be something that is typically not visible to you, that you have to have some form of developing to be able to see.
So it'd be like the magnetic powders or one of the chemicals to get the print to develop so that you can do the examination.
Correct.
And a patent print is one that's right there.
Yeah, it's going to be, maybe somebody has been working on a car with grease or something and touched it or blood or something that's going to be a visible print.
And when you do an analysis or comparison of a print, the first thing that you do is you look at the general shape and structure of the print that you're examining. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the analysis stage, we look at it just to look at pressure, any distortion, kind of getting that level 1 detail.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about level 1, 2, and 3 detail. Level 1 detail is going to be just that you look at it and you figure out if it's going to be a finger, palm, or one of the mid joints. Then figuring out what kind of pattern it is. So the level 1 detail is going to be kind of that simple, looking at a left loop and determining, okay, that's a left loop. So then level 2 is going to be those points that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever people say, how many points did you have? That's going to be the points that are going to be part of that.
So again, level 1, you're talking about just looking at it laying there and then the general pattern that it has. And there's, what, about 9 different patterns?
There's loops, whorls, and arches, and then there's subgroups of each one.
Subgroups of those. But about, with the subgroups, it's around 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And so that gives you at least, so you know, okay, we're looking at a loop here, we're looking at a whorl, we're looking at an arch, and then you can go down into the subgroups. And so that allows you to eliminate some potential, just with the word, the person who the print would belong to. You can eliminate suspects that way.
Sure.
Okay. And then you talked about points of comparison, and how exactly does that work?
Points are going to be, and you have all the ridges that are going to show up on your fingers, your palms, the bottom of your feet, your toes. And on all those you have ridges that flow on them, and every so often they'll stop flowing where you have ending ridges. They will bifurcate where it'll split into 2. Sometimes you'll have a dot, sometimes you'll have incipient ridges, which aren't real ridges because they don't have sweat pores in them, but they're going to be they're going to be ridges between the ridges. You'll have enclosures where it'll kind of have two bifurcations next to each other. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking to whenever we're trying to determine points.
And I guess level 3 detail is looking at the actual pores that are present.
That's going to be poroscopy ridgeology. It's going to be looking at the pores and the ridges, the ridge shape, the distance between the ridges, and the pores, the size of the pores where they show up on the ridges.
And that level of detail often, I mean, for you to make an identification, you don't have to have that level of detail of
You do not.
examination. And in fact, usually doesn't go much beyond level 2. Would you agree?
That's true. We use level 3 during that level 2 process, but we don't mark it up as points in that respect. So yes.
And again, I know you talked about APHIS, and that's just a database. I think you said you were using the state system at that time. Is that correct?
At that time, we had a system that that searched the entire state.
The entire
So
state.
all 95 counties.
And did that also go through local people, local suspects? 'Cause
Yeah,
when people are booked, their fingerprints are taken.
Whenever they, yeah, I mean, the database includes a lot of different people. I mean, there are things outside of just people that have been arrested, but for the most part, the main intent of the database is people that have been arrested from every county, and that gets put in.
And I guess part of the most, because again, it's not like on TV where a computer system pulls all this up and does the analysis and everything flashes and says, hey, okay, we've got a match here. What this really depends on for fingerprint identification analysis is you're having to visually look at it, correct, as the examiner to make that determination.
Correct.
There's not a certain number of points that you need as a standard across the country to be able to say this is the person, this is the source of this latent print, correct?
Correct.
Is there a general standard that KTD was employing during this time that they were looking for a number of those points of comparison before they could make, and before you would feel comfortable making an identification?
We were like everybody else in the country, just through the International Association for Identification. They kind of helped determine, and also the working groups that worked with it, that you didn't have to have a minimum number. And we applied that to us also.
And in the identification of these prints of LaMarcus Davidson and Mr. Cobbins, you were comfortable, do you know, and I know each one is unique, and I don't want to go through each one of these one by one and say how many points of comparison you had, but in general, how many, when you're talking about them, and then I know with the palms, you're getting a lot broader surface than you would with just a fingerprint. But can you just give us a roundabout number of points of comparison that you were able to make on these prints?
You're right. Each one of them is unique. If you're looking at a finger, you're usually, I mean, a finger will have, a fully rolled finger could have 80 to 120 points on it, somewhere in that area. The areas that we're looking at, with a finger, we might have 10, 12, 15, 18 points, kind of in that range. With a palm print, I mean, we had some of the palm prints where it probably had, 40 or 50 points on it. It was pretty significant.
No doubt in your mind that the person whose palm prints were on those trash bags was LaMarcus Davidson.
Correct.
Okay. And I guess probably one of the most important part of this whole identification is the verification step, because this depends on the analyst, correct? It has to be verified by another member of your unit before that identification can be officially made. Is that correct?
Correct.
And again, I know that you said Dan Crenshaw did some of these. If you could tell the jury a little bit about Mr. Crenshaw's qualifications.
He was also a certified latent print examiner, so he went through the same testing that I went through. So we were kind of lucky at that time, because we had, at that time there was about 800 people in the world that were certified latent print examiners. We had 2 of them in Knoxville. So it was kind of a unique situation. But he went through all the same testing procedures I did. Him and I both went to almost all the same classes together, whether it was the FBI beginning and advanced fingerprint, the Pat Wertheim ridgeology class, the Ron Smith palm print school, and we went to a lot of the IAI conferences together. So.
And part of that test that you were talking about, it's a pretty tough test, is it not?
About half the people that take it fail it.
And again, even after you take the test, you still have to do peer review, is that correct?
What we do every 5 years, they'll send you out a test that you have to take, and then you turn into them, and then they tell you if you keep your certification based on whether you pass or fail it.
So again, it's that verification step that's so important in what you do as an analyst in fingerprint examination.
Correct.
And I think you also worked with Art Bohannon, is that correct?
Yes.
And of course, he's famous in this field as well.
Correct.
And after looking at all these items and examining all these different things that were submitted for fingerprint identification, you didn't find any fingerprints that belonged to Eric Boyd.
We did not.
Thank you.
Just briefly, I failed to qualify you as an expert. You have testified in the past and been accepted as an expert in
I
certified
submit that
fingerprint examiner.
he's an expert. I submit he's an expert in fingerprint identification.
The court will recognize Mr. Shade as an expert in the field of forensic fingerprint identification.
Correct.
And same thing is true about Dan Crenshaw. He has passed now, but when he testified, he was also at the time accepted as an expert in the field of certified fingerprint examination.
Yes.
So,
I believe you just said that.
Okay, thanks, sir.
thank you. I think they're getting Patty Rez if she's next. I need to move all this. Not like that. Yes.
All 11, all 3.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it will.
Please have a seat.
Thank you. Please give us your name.
Patricia M. Brasic, R-E-S-I-G.
Where, in 2007, where were you employed?
I was employed at the Knoxville Police Department.
How long were you with the Knoxville Police Department?
19 years.
And have you since retired?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Directing your attention back to January 2007, did you have occasion to respond to Chipman Street?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And I guess what were your duties there when you went to Chipman Street?
I was called by my supervisor of the forensic unit to deliver a camera battery to Specialist Cox.
And so while you were there, did you take on an additional duty?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is it that you did?
I assisted in documenting the crime scene.
And how did you document the crime scene?
I prepared diagrams of the overall house and the individual rooms along with measurements.
And so I want to focus in on just the overall diagram of the house. Looks like that's 425. Did you prepare Exhibit 425?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us the approximate size of the entire house?
May I refer to my notes, Your Honor?
Sure.
The overall square footage of the house is 805.8 square feet.
Yeah, would it be permissible for her to step down and write that on the diagram?
Certainly.
And what I'm gonna do is ask you if you can write that, I guess, behind the house, and then I'm gonna ask you to give us the square footage for each room.
What would you like to do?
Probably outside, because I'm gonna ask you to write the
Oh,
square
I
footage.
see.
Sure. What's the, do you have the square footage for the sunroom?
The sunroom is 106 square feet.
Can you write that for the sunroom, please?
Again, you want it
In the sunroom, the square footage for the living room, please?
living room square footage is 199 square feet.
Square footage for the kitchen?
The square footage for the kitchen is 170.8 square feet.
That back porch there? That area?
Which I've designated as a utility room, is 39 square feet.
The south bedroom?
South bedroom is 142 square feet.
And the north bedroom?
The north bedroom is 124 square feet.
Would that house fit inside of this courtroom?
Yes. Also, I did the square footage for the bathroom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which was 25 square feet.
We would like to move into evidence exhibit 425, please.
No objection.
Let it be received.
You said it would fit inside the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Besides drawing the diagram, did you examine two guns, or maybe two guns, a rifle, and some casings?
Yes, I did.
Bullets?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk to us about, I really want to just direct your attention to 22 caliber handguns. What can you tell us about 22 caliber handguns, just in general, before we talk about those?
22 caliber handguns, you can either have a revolver or a semi-automatic pistol.
And is that a big gun or a small gun?
That's a smaller gun.
22 caliber guns, I guess, compared to other guns, what are the other types of guns that are out there? Like a 22 caliber, 9mm?
You mean different calibers?
Yes.
22 caliber, 32 caliber, 38 caliber, 357 caliber, 40 caliber, 9mm, 45 caliber, 50 caliber.
And 22 caliber, so you can either be a revolver or a semi-automatic handgun?
As far as handguns go, yes, it could also be a rifle.
What is a revolver?
A revolver is a firearm design that has a rotating cylinder that contains multiple chambers, and as you operate or fire the revolver, it actually rotates on a cylinder or on its axis.
What is a semi-automatic handgun?
That's a firearm design that requires a separate pull of the trigger for each shot fired, and then automatically extracts and ejects the cartridge case.
Now, do you have educational or training experience that allows you to examine firearms?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your, tell us your background, training, and experience that allows you to hold a position in the examination of firearms?
I received my training in firearm and tool mark identification from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement at the Orlando Regional Crime Laboratory. And that was a 2-year intensive training program which involved readings on firearms, the history of firearms, excuse me, the histories of firearms identification, disassembly and reassembly of firearms, excuse me, and looking at known matches, excuse me, looking at known matches, known non-matches, which is microscopic comparison work, and working supervised casework with qualified examiners.
Have you been qualified as an expert in firearms examination and identification?
Yes, I have.
How long have you been a firearms examiner?
Over 20 years.
With KPD?
17 years with KPD.
Have you examined many or few firearms?
Many firearms.
Have you been accepted as a firearms expert in Knox County,
Yes, I have.
in state court,
Yes, ma'am.
and federal court?
That's correct.
We were offered Patricia Razik as an expert in firearms examination and identification.
No objection, Your Honor. I believe she's qualified.
The court will recognize Patty Razik as an expert in forensic firearms identification and examination.
All right, so in this case, is it okay for Examiner Razik to step down?
Sir?
What we do, you want to step down, you just corner here, and let you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how this works. Showing you Exhibit 333, do you recognize Exhibit 333?
Yes, I do. I recognize this exhibit by the KPD case number, the exhibit number, the date, and my initials.
And did you examine, and what is, for the record, tell us again what Exhibit 333 is?
Exhibit 333 is a .22 caliber high standard model, Sentinel model, double action revolver.
And tell us about your examination.
It's safe. What I did was prepare a worksheet of information about the gun, its type, its model, number of chambers in the cylinder, serial number, whether I was a test fire to see whether it's functional.
And was it functional?
Yes, it was.
And how many bullets does it hold?
It owes none.
Now, is there some type of examination that you can conduct to determine whether or not a bullet has been fired from that gun?
Yes, sir.
And what is it, what examination, what are you looking for in trying to determine whether or not a particular bullet came from that gun?
We use a model.
Yes, please. Use a model. If you can use a model bullet to explain
Sure, of course.
how the gun works.
This is a model of a cartridge. There's four component parts to the cartridge. There's the bullet, there's the casing, there's the primer, and there's the gunpowder. To do a comparison of a fired bullet or fired cartridge case to test parts from a gun, what I do first as a firearms examiner is see if the class characteristics are in agreement. Class characteristics are design features, and they are determined prior to the manufacture of the gun. So class characteristics of gun that relate to the cartridge case fired in it may include the firing pin, the breech face marks, the location and shape of the extractor and ejector marks. Class characteristics of gun that relate to the bullets fired from it can include the caliber, the number of lands and grooves, which is the rifling, the direction of twist, and the measurements of these rifles. When I see agreement, whether I'm looking at comparing a question bullet or question cartridge case to test fires from a gun, if I see that the class characteristics are in agreement, then I look at the individual characteristics. The individual characteristics are unique marks. They're random marks from the imperfections or the irregularities of the tool that makes the gun. And also those marks can be caused from use, abuse, corrosion, and erosion. So when I look at the class characteristics in agreement, I look at the individual characteristics, and if I see a sufficient agreement of those individual characteristics, then I can say a particular cartridge case, the question cartridge case came from this gun or a bullet was fired from the gun.
So, in this case, after you examined, I guess you examined that gun, did you also examine the recovered bullets from Mr. Newsom's autopsy?
Yes, ma'am.
Specifically, Exhibit 368, 369, and Exhibit 370.
And again, I recognize these exhibits by the KPD case number, the exhibit number, the date, and my initials.
And at this point in time, we'd like to move into evidence. I mean, they were Dr. Malusi collected them, but for purposes of your testimony.
So that's fine. I know you're calling Dr.
Very well, it can be made exhibits to this witness's testimony.
So for the record, that's 368, 369, and 370. Can you tell the jury first, what is Exhibit 368?
Okay, 368 is a 22 long rifle fire bullet.
And where was that recovered from?
Oh, it's on this. Recovered from right now, and that's victim designated. He was
Can you open that and just show that to them? Now, is that bullet in good shape or bad shape?
that bullet is in pretty good shape.
And so as a firearms examiner, what does that indicate to you about that bullet?
That it's a lead bullet, and so it did not hit anything harder than it.
So were you able to examine that bullet to determine whether or not that bullet was fired from that Sentinel?
I did do a comparison of this bullet to test fires from the Sentinel, and I was inconclusive with the results. In other words, there was a although they displayed similar class characteristics that we talked about with the bullet, there was a there was not a agreement or disagreement of the individual characteristics, which would allow me to identify it to a gun. There was a lack of that.
So you were not able to say that that bullet was fired from this Sentinel here?
That's
Did you also compare it to Exhibit 334, the clerk recovered from Kentucky?
yes, it is.
And were you able to determine whether or not that bullet was fired from this clerk?
It was also inconclusive, but there was a significant disagreement of the individual.
Okay. .369, can you tell the jury what Exhibit 369 is and show it to them?
369 designated a bullet recovered from back of the victim, Newsom.
That bullet in good condition or not good?
Pretty good condition.
And so what does that indicate to you?
That it likewise did not hit something on the legs.
Are you able to determine whether or not that bullet was fired from the Sentinel?
Again, I was inconclusive on that, and because there was a lack of agreement or disagreement of the individual characteristics.
And what about the clerk?
Significant disagreement of the individual characteristics.
And then Exhibit 370.
And again, I recognize this by the KPD case number, the exhibit number, the date, and my initials, and this is designated as recovered from Newsom, recovered from skull.
How would you describe the condition of that bullet?
This bullet is damaged. As you can see, it's flattened on the nose, and there's some other areas of damage on it.
What does that indicate to you?
That it hit something, or it was damaged, it hit something on itself, and it is designated as being recovered from the skull.
And did you examine that bullet to see whether or not it was fired from the Sentinel?
I did.
And what was your conclusion?
Again, there was a lack of agreement or disagreement of the individual characteristics, and so I was inconclusive.
And what about the clerk?
And I also compared it to the Clark revolver, and there was a significant disagreement of the individual characteristics. May I talk about the first two bullets? On the first two bullets that we looked at that were more in better condition than this one, they were determined as being fired from the same movement.
Were you able to make that the same determination for that bullet?
No, there was not. There was a lack of the individual characteristics.
Now, even though these bullets, you were not able to say that they were fired from the Sentinel or this clerk, have you continued to, did you enter them into a database just so that they can compare with other guns that were recovered?
Yes, they were entered into something called the IBIS system, which stands for Integrated Ballistic Identification System. And at the time, we were entering both test-fired bullets and question bullets into that database. And that's, we're no longer entering bullets in, but I entered in those bullets plus the test fires from the two revolvers.
And then, have we been able to locate the gun that fired these bullets yet?
No.
However, did you examine Exhibit 365?
Yes, I did, and again, I recognize it by the KPD case number, the exhibit numbers, the date, and my initials.
And remind us again where those casings were recovered from?
These casings were stated to be recovered from the front porch.
And what did your examination of those casings reveal to you?
There were 5 of them, and they were all fired in the same gun. And then I also compared them to the submitted high standard revolver, and I determined that they were fired in the revolver.
What about Exhibit 406? Did you examine Exhibit 406?
Yes, I did, and these were actually live round cartridges, and I used them to test fire the submitted high standard revolver.
What about Exhibit 357?
Again, I recognize this exhibit by the KPD case number, the exhibit number that being in my initials, and this is also a 22 long rifle 5 cartridge case, and I determined that this cartridge case, which was retrieved from the top of the refrigerator, was also fired in the same gun as the other 5 casings from the front porch, which was also then fired in the submitted high standard revolver.
So the recovered casings that you examined, they were fired from this revolver here, the one found on Reynolds Street.
Yes, that's correct.
But we have not recovered any casings or any bullets that were fired from this Clark revolver.
Only that I was inconclusive comparing those bullets from Chris Newsom to the test fires from Clark, although there was significant disagreement of the individual cases.
Tell us about your examination of the Clark revolver.
The Clark revolver was actually submitted with you had the frame of the revolver and then the cylinder assembly and crane, or it's also called a yoke, and one screw were separate from it. It was missing a cylinder retaining pin.
Even though it was missing the pin, would it still work?
It was still fired, but I had to frequently advance it or index it to line up the chamber from the cylinder with the barrel of the gun.
Is there any way to determine whether or not these bullets that were recovered from Mr. Newsom, whether or not they were fired with a revolver or a semi-automatic 22?
No, not.
We just know it was a 22 gun.
The 22 gun. There are some indications on bullets that may suggest that it was fired from a revolver, but you can also have some of those indications that it was fired from a semi-automatic.
Cross-examination.
Comparing whether a spent case shell came from a gun is different than determining whether a bullet came from a gun, correct?
There's different class characteristics, like I went over with class characteristics of firearms that relate to the cartridge cases, or class characteristics that relate to the bullet, correct?
And so from the casing, what it is the firing pin actually striking the casing that can cause some defect to the casing after it's been fired, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and that's what you're comparing when you're looking at casings to see, hey, if this came from this gun and this came from this gun. It's what the firing pin did, what effect it had on the casing, correct?
In this case, yes, and not only, I mean, you're looking at the firing pin impression, the marks in that, but there's other things you're looking at, the breech face marks, whether there was an extractor and ejector mark, and also chamber marks.
Okay. And so those are the things that you look at whenever you're looking at casings, correct?
That's correct.
All right, when you're looking at bullets, you're looking at other things that you're looking for, correct?
Again, there's class characteristics of firearms that relate to the bullets fired through them, yes.
Okay. So, and just so I think I have an understanding of what your testimony was, you can't, the gun that was recovered that had been in the possession of Mr. Davidson, you cannot eliminate that as being the gun that fired the bullets.
Not with 100% scientific certainty.
Okay, you can't eliminate those as being the gun that fired the bullets that killed Chris Newsom. But you have serious doubts that it may have been the gun that Mr. Cobbins was caught with at Leclerc, that he was caught with up in Kentucky.
There's several reasons why there was a significant disagreement of the individual characteristics with the clerk. There could be environmental issues to do with, or it could do with usage, or it could be alteration, or it could not be the gun. If the class characteristics of a gun are in agreement with a question component, ammunition component, I do not eliminate it.
And just so we're clear, 22 caliber comes in, it's not just uniform, there are different sizes of 22 caliber bullets, correct?
Typically there's like 22 long rifle, 22 short. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I was asking about. Yeah, they come, and so that different 22s can fire different types. So for example, if you had a gun that would fire a 22 short, would it be capable of firing a 22 long?
No, I mean, like if on that particular exhibit, the high standard revolver, it was listed as 22 caliber, you could fire a short, a long, or a long rifle in it. I believe the clerk was listed as 22 long rifle.
And again, in the different sizes of the bullets, the 22 short, is that smaller?
Yes, that's correct.
And then I guess the next would be the 22 long.
Well, the 22 long and the 22 long rifle actually have the same casing, but they have, the 22 long has 22 short bullet, and the 22 long rifle has a heavier bullet.
It's got a heavier bullet. Okay. But if there was a gun, for example, that fired and that was designed to fire a 22 short, it would not be capable of firing the 22 long rifle. Typically,
no, but until I see the gun, I've seen some cheaper handguns where you could fire things which you wouldn't have expected to fire in them.
And that would be based on the fact that they weren't, the efficiencies in the design of the gun were such that, you know, it's cheaper manufacturing,
It could be.
The quality is not there.
But typically you wouldn't fire a long rifle in a short.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, 22 caliber semi-automatic handgun, is that a small handgun or a large handgun?
That's a small handgun.
Thank you.
Was it the revolver or the semi-fire, any one of the three?
The revolver, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? You can step down.
Thank you, sir.
Ready for number one. Van Foster. Van Foster.
Chamber Foster.
Foster, yes, sir.
Yeah.
solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Give the jury your name, please, sir.
I'm Daniel Foster.
Who do you work for?
I work for the city of La Follette.
Back in 2007, who did you work for?
I work for the state fire marshal's office.
In what capacity? What were your duties?
I was a special agent criminal investigator, and my duties were basically investigating crimes, particularly with a purview to arson and explosives.
Okay. Back in 2007, did you work with a gentleman by the name of Robert Watson?
Yes, I did.
And what were his duties? Same as yours?
His duties were the same as mine. At that time, Robert Watson also was a K-9 handler, and I guess during that same year, I became a K-9 handler, but yes.
And back on, specifically on January 10th, 2007, did you have occasion to assist Mr. Watson in investigating a scene around the railroad track?
Yes, I did.
And tell us what you all did when you came to examine that scene.
When we came to examine that scene, generally what the K-9 handler would do, which was Robert, he will go look at the scene to make sure the scene is safe, that it's clear, that he can work his dog in it without his dog getting injured. Then he will basically calibrate his dog. And to calibrate your dog, it just means to put out like a drop of some type of ignitable liquid away from the scene in an area that you check to make sure it's clear. You run your dog over that to see if your dog alerts on that. If your dog alerts, or we call it having a change of behavior, then you know that your dog is ready to work in the scene. And then, if I recall correctly, I think he put his dog back up. We will go back up to the scene with some other officers and discuss how we're going to work the dog on the scene.
And can you recall how the dog was worked on this particular scene?
Yes, sir. So he got his dog out and he brought his dog up to the scene, which were basically railroad tracks. And I think he worked his dog off leash, which just means his dog ran free to sniff the area. He worked his dog around the scene, and his dog did have a change of behavior on the tracks.
And what the change in behavior, what does that indicate from the dog?
So when the dog has a change of behavior, it means that that dog knows that it is in the scent cone, the odor of an ignitable liquid and accelerant of some type is there.
And the change of behavior, did the dog just sit down, or does that give you an idea of where he is detecting that odor?
Yes, so the dog, what the dog will do is, generally, when they detect this, and these are the dogs that we were using, these are ATF Accelerant dogs, this dog will dip its snout towards the area that it smelled it in. These are food reward dogs, so you feed the dog when it does something positive in this manner. He fed the dog a kibble or two, and then you'll say the phrase, "show me." And when you say "show me," what it does is it's telling the dog, I want you to be more specific and show me right where you are saying the best place for me to collect my evidence is. And when he did that, then the dog would sit in that area and point its snout down to where the best place to collect evidence is.
Okay. And once he does that, then what do you all do?
And so after the dog designates us an area, we mark that area off. I don't remember what he used to mark it. Sometimes you'll use flags to mark it, or a golf tee, or maybe a number to designate this is where my dog hit at. And if the dog hits in more than one area, you'll mark each area off. Then you'll put your dog up and you'll come back and collect your evidence.
So Mr. Watson had the trained dog, is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And just for the record, he has since passed since this day?
Yes, sir.
2007. So then what did y'all do then after the dog alerted to a specific location?
Okay, so after the dog alerted and you've got it marked and you've got your dog secured, you'll come back and collect your evidence. And so in this case, Robert will put on latex gloves. He used a couple tools like a garden trowel and a little garden rake to collect his evidence. He'll collect his evidence, then he will change gloves so that you don't contaminate your next area that you're going to collect evidence in again. And you do the same thing there as well, which he collected 2 cans of evidence.
I may approach. One at a time. And you were there when this was collected by Mr. Watson, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what did Mr. Watson gather and place into this one can? First of all, is that the can? Can you look at that and recognize that to be a can?
Yes,
from
this
scene?
appears to be the can, yes.
Okay. And can you tell what he collected and placed into that can?
So when we collected that evidence, what he put in this can was, it was probably some little particles of clothing, may have had some flesh on there, gravel, and some dirt type of debris.
Now, why is it placed into a paint can?
Reason why we placed it in paint cans because it's easier for them to test it at the lab, at the laboratory. This is a good way to maintain your evidence intact as well to try to keep as much as the vapor as possible from escaping until you can get it to the laboratory.
And is that what the lab tests for, the vapor that may be sealed up inside that can?
Yes, sir.
And the second can, do you recognize that as being collected also on January 10th, about a little after 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And what contents of that can that are sealed and sent to the lab?
I think this can is going to have about the same contents.
That's from a different location?
From a different location in there.
Alerted on?
Yes.
We would move Exhibit 388, and it's the next exhibit.
No objection.
And also 387.
Let it be received.
Again, are these cans sealed there at the scene?
Yes, they are. As you can see, he's got tape covering it, evidence tape covering it, and we do that so that we can sign off on it. We know that nobody else has tampered with it, and we pretty much maintain control of that evidence.
And did it remain sealed until it went to the TBI crime lab?
As far as I know, it did.
Approach also with a series of 4 pictures. Ask you to look at those and see if those are pictures from that day as well. We'll display it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll display them on the wall. First of all, exhibit number 23. Can you just tell us what we're looking at there from that scene?
Well, up in the background, the rise with the gravel on it, that's, I'm pretty sure that's the train tracks.
Okay.
And this pathway is I think we parked just in that area to walk up to it.
Just showing the approach to where you were going.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Exhibit 24.
Yes, that looks like that's the area that the evidence was collected. I mean, you got the cans down there, so those are the 2 areas where the evidence was collected and the officers were just examining those spots.
Where the dog alerted?
Yes.
Okay. And exhibit 25. You recognize the individuals in this picture or some of them?
Yes, I do. Myself there on the left, and you got, I guess that's Doug Connor, worked for Knoxville, and Dennis Kinnemer worked for ATF.
Okay. Is that, again, the location with the cans?
Yes, and that's the
Employed.
evidence cans and location.
And exhibit 26.
Yes, and again, you got your evidence cans, and I can see in there he's got the numbers on the top, 1 and 2. He's also discarded his gloves between each collection of evidence from the area.
And was this evidence collected in the customary practice that you and he were both trained on?
Yes, sir.
We'd move exhibits 23, 24, 25, and 26.
No objection. Let them be received.
So you were present whenever the dog alerted, and you were also present when these items were collected, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said that you were trained on the canine as well?
Yes, sir.
Needless to say, a dog's nose is more sensitive than a human's nose, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they can detect things that you or I could not, correct?
That's correct.
And they have different types of dogs. Obviously, police use different dogs for different things. But, for example, a tracking dog responds to like what they call a Pockern scent or a fear scent is how they track people or suspects Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that.
Well, I guess my point is that
I mean,
each-
I know there are different types of dogs, but I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, so these different types of dogs are trained to respond to a particular scent. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and so whether it's being narcotics detection, tracking a person or a suspect, or cadaver dogs, they're each trained in a different way.
Yes, sir.
And these dogs that y'all use, these dogs are trained for the scent of hydrocarbons, correct?
That's correct.
And that's what they are responding to, is that odor from the hydrocarbons.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Reader? No. You can step down. Thank you, sir.
Russ Whitfield. Anything?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Please have a seat.
Please give us your name.
Russell Whitfield,
Where are you employed?
the Knoxville City Police Department.
What do you do with the Knoxville City Police Department?
I work in the forensic unit.
And how long have you been with the forensic unit?
I've been in the forensic unit 22 years.
Now, did you have occasion to assist in the investigation of Mr. Newsom's death?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you respond to the scene, I get to the railroad tracks, I guess on the 10th? of
January 10th, yes, ma'am.
Tell us about what you did when you arrived at the scene.
One of our investigators called me, and when I arrived on the scene, which was about 2:40-ish or so in the afternoon, I met with Investigator Claiborne briefly. He explained some things to me, and he wanted me to take pictures. He said, arson guys are at the railroad tracks, and we need you to take pictures.
And so, did you take pictures?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What else did you do?
So now, Chris was located, he was found on Sunday, and I wasn't caught until Wednesday. So I took photographs of a burn scene near the railroad tracks. It's on the gravel. I examined that a little more closely, moved some rocks out of the way, and found a small piece of cloth that was under the rocks. It had been burned, and I thought the stitching on it was rather wide. So I collected it. It was colorful, and arson guys are looking around, and I don't know a whole lot about arson, but they're there, and let them do it. So I looked around some more, and about 50 yards north, I located a long piece of cloth, which I first thought was a cocktail. It's tied in knots. But when I got closer, I realized it's the same color, it had the same white stitches, it's the same kind of cloth that was at the railroad tracks. It was photographed and confiscated.
Did you notice anything else in that area?
There was one of those blue, it doesn't have to be blue, there's a handle, like you have a dog leash, and I photographed, confiscated it. The leash was broken, so I think that photograph is a little blurry, but anyway.
Let me show you some photographs, see if you recognize the photographs. See, looking here at 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, and 207. Do you recognize those photos?
Yes, ma'am, it's photographs I took.
I'd like to move exhibits 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205, 206, and 207 as evidence.
No objection. Let them be received.
Would you post those to the jury? Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here? What are we looking at here, sir?
Okay. And the kind of in the top right-hand corner, just so you orientate, is going to be the railroad tracks. And if we come down and to the left, you'll see this, what I reference as a creek. And I don't know, like, am I touching screen? Oh, here's the multicolored cloth that I was talking about. It's the one I first thought might be a kitetail. And to the right of it slightly is going to be the dog leash.
201?
Here's how I just scooted up to a little bit and took another photograph. Basically, it's the same thing.
I was gonna say, where's the railroad tracks at?
The railroad tracks are way over to the upper right-hand corner here.
202?
So I come closer and take another photograph.
And the multicolored,
It's really dead center here. Got another one up here. This is the multicolored cloth with the wide stitches on it. It was collected. It's about 50 yards. Would be north of the railroad tracks.
204?
I tend to take a lot of pictures, and this is another photograph that I took of the multicolored cloth.
205?
And here's the what I call the dog leash. It has the this blue.
206?
So that's the second part of the cloth that was in the scene. It's as you can see, it's been tied. That's the way I found it.
207?
That's a close-up. What I was trying to focus on here was this wide stitching. I don't know a whole lot about sewing, but thought that was unusual.
Exhibit 413, do you recognize Exhibit 413?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize Exhibit 413 to be?
Well, this is the dog leash that was in the photographs. This is my handwriting, the KPD report number, the date. Like it's been open once, TBI, but this is the way that I found it. It's the way I photographed confiscated.
Exhibit 413 in his evidence?
No, Chair.
Will be received.
Exhibit 389, do you recognize Exhibit 389?
Yes, ma'am. This is one of the cans that was at the scene near the railroad tracks. Our arson guys have.
Wait, double check it.
Let's see what they're doing.
What happened to the items that you collected from the railroad tracks?
When I originally collected them, they were put in a bag, and our arson guys might have put them in here. I don't know.
Can I see your scissors again?
Thank you. But don't break your scissors. That's in my pocket.
those items that you collected?
Yes, ma'am. This is the bags I've used, my handwriting, my initials, again, same report number.
Would it be okay for him to step down and display it to the jury?
Yes.
If you could, before you step, I was gonna ask if you could step down and explain it to the jury, but explain to the jury how it ended up. You said, can you put it in the bag and then somebody puts it in that can?
Yes, ma'am. I believe our arson guys put it in the can. Ooh, dang. Like a little charcoal mess here. Be careful.
What are we looking at?
I'm gonna hold it up. This is from the prior. Here's that sample at the railroad tracks. Turn it around and walk all the way down. See, the charcoal, multicolored line stitches. Then we went 50 yards south, a little creek area, saw pictures next to the tree. Little knot, first off, the little knot tied in. More fire debris samples.
I'd like to move into evidence exhibit 389, collectively.
Ready to be received.
Let's put those back in.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. location, Chipman Street, 2316 Chipman Street, that's located here in Knox County.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
The Washington Roof Apartments, that's located here in Knox County.
Yes, ma'am.
Looks like it. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
No, I just wanted to make sure I didn't.
All right, I got you now. Officer Whitfield, how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, sir.
I promise you I don't have a lot of questions for you. I believe you said that this location where you find this material in the dog leash was 50 yards?
It's about 50 yards.
About 50 yards. Could I approach? It's been a long time. I believe you testified at the Latavius Cobbins and the LaMarcus Davidson trials, correct?
Yes, sir.
If I can refresh you, this is the transcript from the Latavius Cobbins trial. This is going to be on page 632 of that transcript, and this is actually when I believe you're being directed by General Fitzgerald. But I guess the question, if you would look at somewhere about line 16 continued through 19, if that may help refresh your recollection.
Okay, here I've estimated that it was approximately 80 yards.
Okay, so it's a little bit further. It was a little further away than 50 yards.
I don't know, sir.
Somewhere between 50 to 80 yards. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say, yes, sir.
Thank you, officer.
You can step down, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been sitting for 2 hours now, so we'll take an afternoon break. Please go with the court officer. We'll bring you back in a little bit. All right, in brief recess. bring in the jury. You can be seated. Stay ready to talk? Yes, sir. Stand ready to talk?
Yes, sir.
General, you can proceed.
Laura Hodge.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat.
Give us your name, please, ma'am.
Laura Hodge.
Who do you work for?
I'm employed by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and I work in the Nashville Crime Laboratory.
And what are your duties with the National Crime Laboratory?
I am currently assigned to the Firearms and Toolmark Identification Unit.
And tell us, how long have you been employed with the TBI?
26 and a half years.
And in what various capacities over the years?
The first 19 years of my career, I was assigned to the Microanalysis Unit in the laboratory, and my specific duties within that unit were fire debris analysis and gunshot residue analysis.
And did you transfer to another assigned area at some point in time after that?
Yes, in January of 2012, I transferred to the Firearms and Toolmark Identification Unit.
So in 2007, you were with the microanalysis fire debris analysis area, is that correct?
That's correct.
Say that correctly. Tell us a little bit about your educational background and training in this particular field.
December of 1990, I received a Bachelor of Science degree from Middle Tennessee State University. I've been employed by the TBI since December of 1992, and upon my employment in the microanalysis unit, I underwent an in-house training program in fire debris analysis. I also completed both the basic and the advanced Accelerant detection courses given by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I attended the International Symposium on the forensic aspects of arson investigation given by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I also attended the ATF K-9 recertification program on 3 different occasions. I attended classes given by the Hewlett-Packard Corporation on instrumentation, operation, and maintenance. And in my 19 years in the microanalysis unit, I have analyzed thousands of fire debris samples and testified numerous times across the state of Tennessee in both state and federal court to those findings.
And we would ask that she be qualified as an expert in fire debris analysis?
Yes, sir.
Who would agree? All right, the court will recognize Laura Hodge, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, as an expert in firearm and toolmark identification.
I do work in the Firearms and Toolmark Identification Unit, but with regard to my work in this case, the microanalysis unit and fire debris analysis. Fire debris analysis.
All right, an expert in fire debris analysis.
What is fire debris analysis?
Fire debris analysis is analyzing debris from a fire scene for ignitable liquids, and examples of ignitable liquids are gasoline, kerosene, and diesel fuel.
And where do you do this? Where do you inspect samples that come in?
This is done in the laboratory.
Is that in Nashville?
Yes, sir.
Is that lab certified?
We are an accredited laboratory
It's have been since how long?
since 1994.
And we're so accredited back in 2007.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you did in this particular case.
I was given 2 samples, and I was asked to analyze those samples for the presence of any ignitable liquids, such as gasoline, kerosene, or diesel fuel.
Approach with exhibit 387 first. You recognize that can?
Yes, I do. It has my laboratory number, my exhibit number, the date, and my initials. It also has the TBI evidence tape where I resealed it after my examination.
Did you receive that can in a sealed condition?
Yes, sir, I did.
And before we talk about the contents of that, I'll hand up Exhibit 388 as well. Do you recognize that can?
Yes, I do. Again, it has my laboratory number, exhibit number, the date, and my initials, as well as the TBI evidence tape where I resealed it after my examination.
And was it received in a sealed condition?
Yes, it was.
And tell us why debris that you analyze is sealed in paint cans.
Ignitable liquids can evaporate when they are subjected to the environment or to heat from a fire. So in order to protect the ignitable liquids from evaporating any further, we suggest that they be collected and put in what's considered an airtight container, and that's why they're in the metal cans.
Okay. Now, what type do you, obviously you open these cans to examine the debris, is that correct?
Yes.
And what type of debris was sent to you in this case?
One of the cans had rocks and the other one had soil.
So when you received them, opened them up, tell us what you did.
I do what's called a carbon strip recovery method, where I suspend a piece of activated charcoal in each one of these cans, and then I heat the cans. The presence of any ignitable liquids in the cans will vaporize during that heating process, and it will cling to that piece of activated charcoal. Once I remove the cans from the oven and allow them to cool, I remove that piece of activated charcoal and I rinse it with a chemical. I then inject that chemical rinse into instrumentation at the laboratory, and by comparing the recorded data with a library of known standards, as well as identifying peaks within that data, I'm able to classify any ignitable liquids that are present.
Okay. And I think you touched on it earlier. What are the different types of ignitable liquids that you're able to test for?
Examples are gasoline, kerosene, and diesel fuel, or just a few.
Are there different temperatures at which those liquids will ignite? How does that work?
Yes, each one has a different temperature at which they will ignite.
And will one ignite quicker than the other?
Yes.
In what order? Which sequence?
Gasoline will ignite quicker than kerosene or diesel fuel.
Now, as it relates to Exhibit 387 and 388, yes. Tell us about 387 first of all.
Okay.
What were your findings as it relates to 387?
My analysis revealed the presence of an evaporated gasoline range product. Product in this range include all brands and grades of automotive fuels, including gasohol.
It was gasoline. Would gasoline be what was found to be present within that can?
Yes, it's a gasoline range product.
You said an evaporated state?
Yes, sir, and it's evaporated.
Okay. And 388, same question.
Again, my analysis revealed the presence of a evaporated gasoline range product. Product in this range include all brands and grades of automotive fuels, including gasohol.
The cans appear to indicate these samples were collected on January 10th, 2007. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How long is the finding of gasoline? How long will gasoline remain present or detectable when you analyze it in a sample?
Gasoline will remain detectable that I can classify it as a gasoline range product within 7 to 10 days once it's exposed to the environment or to heat.
Now, you mentioned that gasoline ignites quickly, is that correct?
That is correct.
And when it does ignite quickly, what are the characteristics of the ignition of gasoline that quickly?
It's much like a fiery explosion.
Is it like a flash of some sort?
Yes, it's the vapors of the gasoline that is igniting, and it can, again, just be like a fiery explosion.
Does that fire type explosion make any types of sound?
Yes, for the lack of better terms, it can make a whooshing sound.
I'll leave those right there for a second. Pass it. Well, I apologize. One more question to the report. Did you prepare a report?
Yes, I did.
Set forth your findings?
Yes, I did.
And if I could approach this appear to be a Xerox copy, can you see if that is an accurate copy of your report?
Yes, this is a copy of my official microanalysis report.
And again, these items were forwarded to you at the request of Robert Watson with the Tennessee Bomb and Arson Section in Knoxville.
Yes, that's correct.
And you're familiar with Mr. Watson?
Yes, sir, I am.
Were at the time?
Yes, sir.
We'd move this official microanalysis report in as Exhibit 446.
No, but we received into evidence. Did you move the two cans into?
I think they've already been moved in.
I believe they were with, previous,
Yeah.
Mr. Honor, Mr. Boston. There was no objection. There were none. Very well.
I believe that you said that this was a gasoline range product, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And I think there's also a light range product, is that correct?
Yes, there are different categories of ignitable liquids.
So a light range product would be something like lighter fluid,
Yes, sir, lighter fluids and camping fuels can be in the light petroleum distillate.
and then a medium petroleum distillate, is that gonna be more like the kerosene and the diesel fuel?
No, sir, medium petroleum distillate is going to be more of a mineral spirits and paint thinners.
Mineral spirits and
Yes,
paint
sir.
thinners, okay. And so would the diesel fuel be included in the gasoline range?
No, it would not.
So is that its own separate?
A diesel fuel is in a heavy petroleum distillate, and that would be the kerosene and diesel fuel.
Okay, I got you now. Okay, so that's heavy, medium, light. Gasoline's its own separate one.
I like to classify them in this manner. There's four main categories. The light petroleum distillates, which is Coleman fuel and cigarette lighter fluid. Gasoline range distillate, which is all brands and grades of automotive fuels, including gasohol. A medium petroleum distillate, which is mineral spirits and paint thinners. And then a heavy petroleum distillate, which is kerosene and diesel fuel.
Gotcha. And gasoline, it burns very quickly.
Yes, sir, it does.
All right, thank you.
You can sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Should you be excused?
Any objection? No. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Derek Norris? Cell phone guy. Yeah. I'm just gonna use the switch records, I'm not gonna use. No, this is a USO. You wanna take what he's saying there, sir?
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please have a seat.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
I'm Derek Norris
Where are you employed?
with U.S. Cellular.
What do you do with US Cellular?
I'm an optimization engineer.
What is an optimization engineer?
I'm in charge of the performance of the U.S. Cellular's network of our towers.
How long have you been with US Cellular?
It'll be 24 years next month.
Have you always held that same position?
No.
How long have you been an optimization engineer?
Since 2012.
What is your educational background that allows you to hold that position?
Engineering, electronics, technology.
We would offer Mr. Derek Norris as an expert in engineering,
Any objection?
optimization engineering, cell phone.
Cellular network.
You gonna testify about the cell phone towers?
Yes.
The court will recognize your last name, please.
Norris.
The court will recognize Derek Norris as an expert in cellular network optimization engineering.
Sir, I'm really just gonna get right to the point.
Sure.
Did you have occasion to pull the switch records for Miss Christian's cell phone records?
Yes.
If I can approach and show you Exhibit 447. Do you recognize Exhibit 447?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 447?
It is switch call records.
What are switch call records?
Basically, it's when a cell phone is on a tower, makes a particular cell phone call, it goes to the switch, and it will route it to the destination that is called.
Now, once it, I guess, goes to that switch, is there a way to get those records to determine which switch it goes to?
Well, there's only one switch for U.S. Cellular.
Okay. When it goes to that switch, what information does that switch keep?
It provides us with, just for the U.S. Cellular network, it provides information on the cell phone, where it was when it made the call, whether it was an incoming or outgoing call, and where it was located when it made that call or received that call.
Now, explain to us, how can you tell where a phone was when a phone call was made?
On this piece of paper, according to this call record, there's an, it is the,
Well, just in general.
yeah, just, there's a code on here that it translates. It's a hex code that tells us which cell site it is.
And so, going back to January 2007, have you provided us with maps as to the different cellular towers here in Knox County?
Yes.
So, if I can approach and show you Exhibit 448. Do you recognize Exhibit 448?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 448?
This is a zoomed in of the area of our Easttown cell site.
So, Easttown, if somebody was, what does this
Okay.
mean?
Well, this here, these colors, it's a lot of different colors, but each color represents a sector for whatever it provides signal. So this here, each of our towers have 3 sectors. This is Easttown Tower. This purple here is the sector 1. The pink is sector 2. And the orangish color is sector 3. That's where it provides signal for this site in these areas.
Are you aware of whether or not Washington Ridge Apartments is the Easttown Tower?
Yes, it is.
So if you're at Washington Ridge Apartments, then you're making phone calls from the Easttown Towers.
Correct.
If I can move Exhibit 448 in as evidence.
Okay. Let me hear you.
449, what is Exhibit 449?
This is a zoomed in version of our Cherry Street Tower.
And Cherry Street's right there.
Correct.
Okay, so explain to us what those colors mean.
The purple area is our alpha or sector 1. Our beta is the dark purple, which is sector 2, and the orange would be sector 3 of our Cherry Street Tower.
And have you done some research to determine if you're on Chipman Street, 2316 Chipman Street, would you hit off the Cherry Street Tower?
Yes.
I'd like to move Exhibit 449 in as evidence.
No objection. Let it be received.
Now, Exhibit 450, what are we looking at?
This is just a high level of multiple towers from our network in this probably a 10 or 15 mile radius.
All right,
This
so this map here, does it show both Easttown and Cherry Street?
Yes.
So if you could, looking at, for the record, we'd like to move into evidence Exhibit 450.
No objection. Let it be received.
So let's look here at Exhibit 447, and let's go to the phone call at 12:33 a.m. Do you see that on the switch record?
Yes, I do.
And can you highlight that, please? What can you tell the jury about the phone call that was made at 12:33 a.m.?
At 12:33, it was made on January 7th. It lasted 31 seconds. 865-660-3783, dialed 539-3722, and it was on our Cherry Street, Sector 3, which would be this area right here.
So can you write, and can you write using that blue marker where the phone was when the phone call was made?
Do you want me to write the, just,
1233.
okay, 1233.
This is where the call is originating.
Oh, yes, I'll clear that up. So is this where the phone call was originated from?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
This was the original caller. It was our U.S. Sailor customer that made a call to a landline or another another cell phone carrier.
Now, how do you know that the phone was down there and not up here at Easttown?
Because of where the phone call was originated from. It was originated on 11B, Sector 3.
And for the record, that's going to be Exhibit 350. In Chipman Street, that is within the Cherry Street cellular tower,
Yes, of the Sector 3, yes.
Sector 3. So what now? 447, like in Exhibit 447 in his evidence.
DJ, better do to see.
Assets?
Cross-examination. No questions. You can step down, thank you, sir.
All right.
Call Daphne Sutton. Thank you, Derek. Just take what we stand for.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, sir. Please have a seat.
Scoot up a little bit closer to the microphone. Tell us your name.
Daphne Sutton,
Can you spell your last name, please?
Sutton,
And your first name.
Daphne.
Where are you from?
Knoxville.
And if I can direct your attention back to, I'm going to go back to 2006. Did you have occasion to meet someone by the name of LaMarcus Davidson?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you meet Mr. Davidson?
Through a friend,
And where were you working at the time?
Sonic,
Which Sonic?
Broadway, possibly Western Avenue,
Okay.
one or the other.
Did the two of you start dating?
Yes,
And then eventually did y'all move in together?
yes.
Where did y'all move to?
2114 Chipman Street.
Now, who all lived there with you?
Just me and LaMarcus Davidson and my two children.
Now, whenever you moved in, whose furniture was in the house?
Mine.
At some point in time, did you move out of the house?
Yes.
When did you move out?
I'm not sure, honestly. I think around Christmas. I left a few times, so.
And is that because
Stop
It's
the
the guy
noise.
in red. Right there.
was he getting violent with you? Put his
Yes.
hands on you?
Yes.
And as is normal, it takes a while to finally get out of the situation.
Yes.
Now, before you moved out, did you come to meet a person by the name of Ethel Lynn Freeman?
Yes.
And how did you come to meet Miss Freeman?
Through a friend of mine, Rhonda Dukes,
And where did Rhonda Dukes live in relationship to you and Mr. Davidson?
2 houses down from Chipman Street House.
And so we've got some pictures that we've looked at here. Is that Rhonda Dukes' picture there? Rhonda Dukes there and Lynn Freeman right there, okay? So, in meeting Miss Freeman, at some point in time, does she offer to sell Mr. Davidson some furniture?
Yes, ma'am. She had went through a divorce and was selling her house, and we had just moved in.
And did Mr. Davidson buy the furniture or make an agreement to buy the furniture or something?
Yes.
And did she also give him some bedding?
Yes,
Now, you said you moved out in December.
I think so.
Did something else happen in December as relates to the residents of the house there?
Yes, supposedly the house was broken into while I was at work.
And whenever the house was supposedly broken into, you were at work. What, if anything, was taken?
My money and Christmas presents.
For your kids?
Yes.
And so who was there at the house whenever you were at work? Was Mr. Davis working?
No.
And so when you come home, what does he tell you?
That somebody broke in and spray painted the N-word on the wall, but it was spelled N-I-G-G-A instead of the way a white person, a racist person would say it.
So did you find that to be suspicious?
Yes, and there was paint on his boots. The same paint.
The brown boots?
Yes.
Now, after that happened, did you finally move out?
Yes. Well, I left several times and came back, but at one point I did move and take everything with
Took
me,
all
all
the
the furniture, except for a kitchen table.
And so when you took all the furniture, were there any beds in the house?
There was an air mattress.
And at some point in time, did someone else come down to the house?
Yes.
Who was that?
Vanessa Coleman, Natalis Cobbins, and George Thomas, and a few other people, other girls.
Did they all come from Kentucky?
Yes. I think Lebanon,
From
Kentucky.
Lebanon?
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the last time before the incident that you finally decided to leave the house. Do you remember that Thursday? Something happened that Thursday?
Yes.
What happened Thursday?
We had been arguing,
You and Mr. Davidson?
me and Mr. Davidson, and he put his hands on me, threw me against the wall, and I left and walked to the gas station on Cherry Street
And who did you go to the gas station for?
to use the phone and to get away from him.
Who did you call?
Brandy Presley and Cassie Settles,
Now, when you left the house, who did that leave at the house?
Lamarcus, and Latalvis, and Vanessa and George.
Now, when you left the house, was anyone else there working?
At the house?
Yeah.
No.
Did any of them have a car?
No.
Now, at the time, did you have a car?
Yes.
What was wrong with the car?
The alternator maybe, or the battery.
I mean, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, it wouldn't start.
If I can approach and show you Exhibit 278. Do you recognize Exhibit 278?
Yes, ma'am.
What is Exhibit 278?
It's my car.
I'd like to move Exhibit 278 in as evidence and Exhibit 282.
My car.
Your car? I'd like to move Exhibit 282 in as evidence. Now, where was your car parked at, even though it didn't work?
It was parked closer to Rhonda's house, 2 houses down from mine.
Still parked on Chipman Street.
Yes, still on Chipman Street.
So whenever you make a phone call to Cassie and Brandy, where do they live?
On Buffett Mill.
Do you recognize Exhibit 305?
Yes, ma'am. Cassie Settles.
That's Cassie. Can you write Cassie at the top? And do you recognize Exhibit 301?
Yes, that's Brandy Presley.
Like to move, we'd like to move Exhibit 301 in as evidence and write Brandy. We'd also like to move Exhibit 305.
Let them be received.
All right, so you called Cassie and Brandy. Were you able to reach them?
Yes,
And what did you ask?
if they would come pick me up.
And did they agree to do that?
Yes, Cassie was there and she come and picked me up immediately, and we went and picked Brandy up from, I'm
Now-
not sure where she was, but we went and picked her up.
Did they pick you up there at the gas station?
Yes.
All right, so whenever when you leave, do you have any intentions of going back to 2316 Chipman?
No.
And so you're staying at Cassie and Brandy's?
Yes.
And where is that at in relationship to 2316 Chipman?
Like 10 minutes from here.
When you get over to Cassie's and Brandy's, that's the Thursday?
Yes.
All right. What happens next?
We just hung out. Eventually, LaMarcus was trying to get a hold of me. Sorry, it's been a long time, so.
And I apologize. So Friday, do you think he's seen Friday?
No.
What about Saturday?
No, I think it was Sunday.
Okay. What do you recall about Sunday?
Or wait, no, I did see him Saturday, I think. One day I went, he asked me maybe to pick him up,
Okay.
and I did go over there, but he was sitting in my car, so that's when I went. I don't know what I went for.
You're fine. Slow down for a second. Let's talk about Sunday. Do you recall him give you some clothes?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that.
Okay, he told me he had clothes for me, and then I had to wait 30 minutes when I asked to come over. So we just jumped in the car and went.
Now, why was that? What did you think?
There was another female there,
So, who jumps in the car and goes?
me and Brandy and Cassie.
And where do you go to?
The house on Shipman Street, my house.
And when you get to the house on Chipman Street, do you go up to the house?
Yes.
And who do you see in the house?
When I walked in, LaMarcus was standing inside of the sunroom, I think, or he might have met me on the porch. As we walked in, I think George, or actually I think it was Latavis I seen first, and he didn't speak. And then I seen George, I think he was rolling a blunt. I tried to go in to get my makeup from the bathroom through the front bedroom, and it was locked, or he stopped me, I'm not sure. Said somebody was in there. I heard sound like something maybe fell in the sink. I came back out and tried to go through the kitchen to go around through the back bedroom to get in the bathroom, and he wouldn't let me. He kept grabbing me. And he gave me the clothes and a ring, tried to give me money.
And so when you saw Latavis and George, what room were they in?
The living room.
And so you walk in the living room, do you go in the front bedroom?
Yes.
Did you see anybody in the front bedroom?
No.
Did you notice anything out of place in the front bedroom?
The kitchen chair was sitting in front of the air mattress, and then the bathroom door, of course, was on the other side.
And so it was not normal to have the kitchen chair in the bedroom?
No.
When you tried to go in the bathroom, what happened?
He grabbed me and told me that it wasn't my house, I didn't live there anymore.
And what did you then do?
I went to leave.
If I can approach and show you Exhibit 336. Do you recognize Exhibit 336?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize Exhibit 336 to be?
The ring that he gave me.
Exhibit 336 in his evidence. Do you know where you got the ring?
No.
So you said the clothing, you said the clothes was in a bag?
Yes.
You remember what kind of bag it was?
Maybe JCPenney, Sears, something like that.
Have you ever gotten your clothes before?
No. And there was, the gang he was affiliated with only wore blue. He didn't want me wearing red. There was a red skirt in it.
Talk about the rest of it. Let me show you what's already been introduced. It's Exhibit 342. You recognize these pants here?
Yeah.
And where do you recognize these pants from?
They were in the bag.
372. Do you recognize Exhibit 372?
Yes.
And where do you recognize Exhibit 372 from?
It's the skirt that Lamarcus gave me.
And this concerns you since it was read?
Yes.
So when he gives you, oh wait. 403. Did he also give you some blue jeans?
Yes.
What kind of blue jeans did he give you?
I don't remember the brand. They were too big for me.
Did you give them back to the police department?
Yes.
Recognize these glow jeans? Are these the jeans that he gave you?
Yes.
And you gave them to the police department?
Yes.
Like to move these in as Exhibit 403?
No objection. Let me be received.
So I take it when you went into the bedroom, you did not see Miss Christian in the bedroom?
No, ma'am. Nobody was in the bedroom.
You had no clue anything was going on?
No.
So he gives you these clothes, what do you then do?
We went back to Cassie's house and just hung out.
You recognize Exhibit 195?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 195?
It's Brandy's and Cassie's apartment.
Which apartment did they live in?
The bottom apartment.
You want to put an X on it?
This is A4. Let me go on read.
All right, so you go back to the apartment. You say you guys were just hanging out.
Yes.
I'd like to have Exhibit 195 in his evidence.
No objection. Let it be received.
All right. What happens while y'all are at Cassie and Brandy's apartment?
Eventually, he found out who I was with. And I guess he walked over at one point. Or no, I'm sorry. He did show up. I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
You're doing fine.
I'm trying to think.
You're doing fine.
I don't know why I feel like he walked to find me or something, but I don't think he did. He showed up over at Brandy's house in a truck that wasn't his.
I was going to ask you about that. And did you ever see the truck?
No.
No.
Or while I was there, yes.
Can you describe the truck for us?
It was the Toyota 4Runner Gold.
Did you see any stickers or anything?
Yes.
Yeah, what stickers did you see?
The Power Tee, the orange Power Tee, and a North Face sticker on the back window.
Back window. Now, did you notice anything about the noise? Did you hear anything?
They had the music really loud.
And did you say something to him about it, or did
Yes.
somebody say something to him about it?
Yes, and I don't remember what he said exactly, but I think he blamed it on the people in the car, his brother or somebody. I'm not sure.
And so when he comes over there, what do you give him the clothes back?
Yeah, I had called him and asked him about the clothes because they were not new, and he told me he'd got them from Planet Exchange or something, and I told him to come back and get it.
And so you gave him the red skirt back?
Yes, I didn't give everything back. I kept a few items.
Yeah. But you eventually gave it to the police.
But I did give those to the police department, yes.
All right, so you give him the items back, the clothes in the Sears bag, the red skirt. Does he then leave?
Yes.
Okay. And so now what I want to do is I want to jump ahead to Monday, the early morning hours of Monday morning. You recall getting a call from him or some kind of way he's contacting you, asking you to come pick him up?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
He had said that his brother had the house key. He couldn't get in touch with Albus and Vanessa, and wanted me to come get him, and he wanted to stay with me.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Whenever you went to get him, where was he at?
He was in my car, I do believe, on Chipman Street.
On Chipman Street.
Yeah.
And so did you take him back to Brandy and Cassie's?
Yes.
And so that's the early morning hours of Monday. Do y'all go to sleep?
Yes.
Do you recall what type of shoes he was wearing?
Some black Nikes.
And did they fit him?
No. They were too little
And how could you tell?
because they kind of curled up at the end, or like you could just tell his feet were crammed in them.
And so y'all go to bed on early morning hours of Monday. Do you recall when you woke up?
Yes. On which day? Monday
Yeah. Tuesday?
or Tuesday?
Okay. How was it when you woke up? What happened when you woke up?
Tuesday I was woke up to a phone call from my mother, and she was telling me that there was a body found in my house. She was worried about me, and he obviously heard her because his eyes got really, really big. And I got off the phone with her, and I told Brandy and Cassie, and I asked him, and he just kept saying, "It's on my fam, it's on my fam," something like that. And we told him he had to leave.
Then did y'all take him someplace?
Yes.
And where did y'all take him?
We went and dropped him off at Richbrook Apartments.
Now, had you ever been to Ridgebrook Apartments before?
Yes.
And do you know Eric Boyd?
Yes.
And do you recognize him at the defense table?
Yes.
You have not had any dealings with Mr. Boyd?
No.
You're okay. So you take him to Ridgebrook,
Yes.
and you know where you drop him off at?
At the bottom half of the apartments.
In Ridgebrook?
Or no, I'm sorry. We took him to the park that was over beside the apartments.
So when you drop him off, do you know where he's going?
No.
When you drop him off, what happens?
We left, and I think the police were. Eventually, I ended up meeting a detective.
And did you talk to the detective about all of this?
Yes.
Last two pictures. Do you recognize 162 and 163?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 162?
It's an apartment at Richbrook.
And Exhibit 163?
And I think that's maybe the park next to it.
I'd like to move Exhibit 162 and 163 in as evidence.
No objection. You receive.
I know you've seen the video from the house before. When you were staying there, would you normally keep a gas can in the kitchen?
No.
The trash can, would you normally keep that trash can in the kitchen?
No. We kept it in the laundry room in the back.
The
The trash can.
What about trash bags for the leaves and stuff that they had?
I think we had it where we would put like our trash outside. I'm not sure. I mean, somewhere outside.
The gas cans, where were the gas cans from, I guess?
I had one on the back porch, maybe, or in the utility room, the laundry room, whatever it is.
Now, did y'all have a dog?
No,
No.
I don't think so. No.
Showing you Exhibit 413. Do you recognize Exhibit 413?
No.
No.
cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sutton.
Hello.
When you went to the house on Sunday and you walked in and Mr. Davidson gave you those clothes, you did not see Eric Boyd there, correct?
No, I did not.
The only people you saw in the house at Chipman Street on that day was LaMarcus Davis, Latalvis Coppins, Vanessa Coleman, and George Thomas.
Yes.
And just so I understand, Mr. Davidson stayed with you, was it Monday night, Monday evening, early morning hours?
Yes, I believe so.
And did he stay with you also on Tuesday night?
No.
But he did stay with you 2 nights, did he not?
Oh, it would have been Sunday night and Monday night.
Sunday
maybe.
night and Monday night, okay. And then on Tuesday, that's when you found out that there was a body in your house
Yes.
and he had to go.
Yes.
And you had a close family member who was a police officer, did you not?
Yep.
And who would that be?
Dennis Bible,
Okay, and who is he?
my uncle.
All right. And who did he work for?
Knox County Police Department.
Okay, so he worked for the Knox County Sheriff's Department, correct?
No, the city.
Oh, he worked for KPD.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. And you were interviewed shortly after you would have dropped off Mr. Davidson over at Ridgebrook, correct?
Yes.
And at least in your initial interviews with police, you were less than forthcoming with them.
Yes.
That'd
at
be a
first.
nice way to put it.
Yes, I lied.
You lied to them about what you had seen and what had occurred. For sure, you lied about the last time you'd seen him.
Yes.
Okay. And then in addition, you lied to him about what had taken place whenever you had been around Mr. Davidson.
What do you mean?
About
What took place?
Whether or not he had a gun, whether you saw a gun.
Did I lie? What are you asking me?
Yeah, I was asking you. You didn't tell them that information, that you had seen him, correct?
I'm not sure.
You don't.
At first, what I told him, honestly, I don't remember the lies.
Okay. And then you talked to him again a second time, is that right?
To who?
Police.
Yes.
And in their second interview, were you totally honest with them at that point in time?
No.
When was it that you became totally honest with law enforcement in this case?
Maybe the third time.
The third time you talked to the police.
Yes.
And that's when you finally told them everything that you knew about what had transpired involving Mr.
I told
Davidson.
them what I knew about where LaMarcus had been.
And again, at Chipman Street, you never saw Mr. Boyd there.
No.
Oh, thank you.
If you leave your thing, you can step down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cassie? Just take a stand up there, ma'am. On the real short.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give in the hearing of this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please have a seat.
Cassie, give us your name.
Cassie Suttles.
And Ms. Suttles, where are you from?
I was born in Brunswick, Georgia, but I was raised in Knoxville.
I want to go back to January 2007. Did you know Miss Daphne Sutton?
Yes.
Did you know Mr. LaMarcus Davis?
Yes.
At some point in time, did you go and pick her up?
Yes.
And I'm just really going to jump ahead. At some point in time, was she and Mr. Davidson staying at your apartment?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you learn about a body being found in the house?
Yes.
And as a result of that, what did you tell Mr. Davidson?
You need to find a ride or I will take you somewhere.
And where did you take?
Ridgebrook Apartments, or the little park area right before you get to it.
And did you drop him off?
Yes.
Did you know where he was going to go?
No.
And did law enforcement, did they stop you and question you at some point in time?
Yes.
And did you talk to them?
Yes.
Did you tell them what you knew?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And whenever Mr. Davidson was there at your apartment, at some point in time, I'm sorry, before that, at some point in time, did you see Mr. Davidson in an SUV?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
At our apartment, you couldn't have loud music past 9 o'clock. And he'd come to see Daphne, and they had music blaring, and it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So I just looked out the window to see who it was, and I saw Mr. Davidson get out of a Forerunner.
And did you know which seat he got out of?
I believe it was behind the driver's seat.
And did you notice anything about the Ford as far as stickers or anything?
No.
Pass the witness.
On the day that Mr. Davidson came over to your apartment in the SUV and got out of the vehicle, you didn't see Mr. Boyd there, did you?
No.
And in point of fact, the only other person other than Mr. Davidson is, I believe Mr. Davidson told you that his brother is the person who had the radio up so loud. Is that correct?
I don't believe he ever told me who it was that had it up so loud. He wasn't driving, so I just assumed he was with people.
Okay. And when you dropped Mr. Davidson off at Ridgebrook, you didn't see Mr. Boyd there either?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, no.
You can step down. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Can you approach?
Certainly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're proceeding well. We're making good progress. We've run out of things to do, in fact, so I'm going to let you go a little early. It is very likely there's going to be media coverage, so again, I caution you, please don't read anything or listen to anything. Just turn off of it as soon as you can. Make sure that when you make your decision, it's on evidence from this witness stand. Tomorrow, this court does not have a regular docket, so